All right. Do you give permission to be recorded, both your face and audio?
Yes, I am comfortable being recorded, audio, visual.
I appreciate that. And
You're welcome.
Would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Paul Ejzack, and I am an English teacher here at Shady Side Academy.
And when you started at Shady Side as a student, actually,
Yes.
Was it always your dream to go to Shady Side, or was that something that you sort of developed over time?
I would say the plan for me to go to Shady Side really started with my older brother, Rich, who attended Shady Side. My oldest brother, Bill, went to our area public school, and when he went off to college, he shared with my parents that he didn't think he had the best preparation. He felt that in terms of some of the background that he didn't necessarily have in some of his courses, particularly in writing, he didn't think he had the best of preparation. And so he advised actually to my parents that when my brother Rich was old enough for high school, that they should look into it. I mean, he didn't know, necessarily whether it should be Shady Side or some other place, but he said, I think you should look into it. And this was a kind of wild consideration for my parents because my dad was a truck driver. This was going to be a real, financial, challenge and sacrifice for them to look into something like an independent school. But my mom and dad both really valued education. Like they didn't go to college themselves, neither one. And it was really important to them that for any of their kids who could, that they would have the opportunity to go to school. My sister Leslie didn't go on to college. That wasn't her chosen path, but for those of us who could, that really mattered to them. So they looked into it for Rich, and they ultimately decided that Shady Side was the best of the bunch. And so yes, when Rich went, he had a great experience here, loved it, went on to college, felt really well prepared. So in that regard, it was kind of. I don't know if I would say a given because I had to go through the admissions process and things like that. But yes, the plan really from the time Rich went here was that if possible, I would go to Shady Side for high school.
And so you started in 9th grade?
So yeah, the plan was senior school then. I remember my parents raising the possibility of the middle school, but of course that would have required additional years of tuition. And the expense, and so that was a consideration, and they felt, and I felt comfortable at my current school, at the current school I was attending at the time. I went to St. Sebastian's Elementary in the North Hills, now Holy Cross Academy, and they felt good about the experience I was having there, and so I finished up through 8th grade there and made the shift then for high school.
And do you think that you were well prepared or adequately had adequate education coming into Shady Side?
Yeah, I do. I thought St. Sebastian's did a nice job. My parents had us there because they did feel that the school did a nice job in terms of the academic program. We were raised Catholic, and so I think the Catholic education mattered to them. I think to my dad especially, but my mom was also really involved in the school when we were students there. And so, yeah, I felt like when I arrived here, I could do the work. That it wasn't all of a sudden new to me to face, the classwork, the homework. The challenges were different, of course, but no, I didn't feel like all of a sudden I was facing, a whole new kind of experience. Yeah.
When you came in, meeting a bunch of new people in high school, that was something that my brother did. He struggled with it a little bit. Was that something that you found easy?
No, that was hard. My mom loves this story. Like when I came home for my first day of orientation at Shady Side, and I was totally new. Like I said, I didn't go to the middle school. I didn't attend a typical feeder school, and I grew up in the North Hills, and there weren't a lot of kids, who came from the North Hills. So. Most of the kids here were either middle school grads or they knew each other from Fox Chapel or Squirrel Hill or something like. So I knew no one, and I came home the first day of orientation miserable, and I said to my mom, I hated it. I didn't know anyone. And of course, that's a story my mom would like to remind me, years later, when I found myself, back as a teacher at the same school. But yeah, it was hard, to come to a new place and not know anyone. Yeah.
Was the structure with having a freshman advisory and having that orientation, we still have that today,
Sure.
do you think that helped, or?
Well, I mean, it helped in the biggest way, specifically with the advice I got on that first or second day. I still remember I was walking across the quad to head down to the gym to catch the 4 o'clock bus, and Mr. Kirkpatrick, who was a history teacher then, and my advisor and my freshman advisor, he said to me, "Why don't you come out for the cross country team?" He was an assistant coach with Bill McConnell, and I never had run. I had kind of loosely in my mind thought maybe I would swim. We had the athletic requirement, and so I knew I had to do something. Maybe I would swim. Maybe I would run track. My brothers had hurdled. But yeah, Kirkpatrick kind of, maybe casually, uttered those fateful words, "Why don't you come out for the cross country team?" And that made all the difference. That became my crew, and it became something that's meant a lot to me ever since.
And still today.
And yes,
Still
now, yes, I am now the head coach of the cross country team here, which is a fun story.
Did you do any other activities at school, or was cross country the main?
So yeah, athletically, I did cross country and track. I was involved with the discipline committee my junior and senior year. It was called the Judicial Committee back then. I thought that was important and meaningful work. I remember sitting on that committee with teachers like Mr. Rossi, who's still here. He and I served on a lot of those cases together. And I remember after one that went late, Mr. Rossi was nice enough to give me a ride home. Like it was, the matter had gone late. It was kind of a difficult situation. And he was talking to me afterward, and he said, "How are you going to get home?" And I said, "Well, I'll call my parents. They'll drive out." I mean, it wouldn't have been, an issue for them. But he said, "Oh, why don't you let me just give you a lift? I'll take care of you." And that was a real great kindness by Tom. Admissions. I also was involved on the admissions committee my senior year. I would say those were the biggest activities I did outside of school, outside of classes.
All right, let me go down. We're going to slowly ease into talking about you as a faculty member.
Sure. Anytime, Parker. I'm happy to help.
Gotcha. And so, coming back, was that sort of always the plan? Did you always want to be a teacher even?
So I decided I wanted to be a teacher, I would say, at a certain point my junior year of college. Junior year of college, you'll see, it's around that time that, very well-meaning relatives and folks like that start to say things like, "So what are you going to do? Like you're a junior, you're going to graduate next year." And for a long time, my kind of default setting was law school. Both of my brothers went to law school. And so I thought about that. But, I started to think about the people I knew who seemed to enjoy their work the most, who seemed to find the most, meaning in their work. And I thought of a lot of the teachers I had here. People like Buddy Hendershot, Bill McConnell, John Satula, Angela Irvin, others who are still here, like Mr. Rossi, Jeff Miller. And I just thought, and I really enjoyed being an English major, and I liked being an English major. And so I thought, if I could combine, the joy I get out of, studying literature and, maybe, what I saw them do is something that maybe it could be. So yeah, that was what sort of took me in the direction of teaching. And I just thought to myself, I didn't start out here at Shady Side, but I always had in mind, if I'm going to do this, I would love to do it at the place, where I had such a good experience for high school. And I have the family that I do here, my parents, my brother. And so all those things, made me want to come back. My nephew, I was close to my nephew and wanted to be near all those folks.
And you mentioned that you didn't initially start teaching at Shady Side. What was sort of the path that led you back here?
So after college, I had a 1-year internship at the Culver Academies. It's a boarding school in Indiana, and they have a program in which they hire. At the time, it was 12 men. It was only guys at the time, but they would hire roughly a dozen young men right out of college, and they'd give you a year of boarding school experience. You'd live in the dorm, have dorm supervisory duties. You'd teach a class. You'd have a mentor in your department. You'd coach. You'd do the whole shooting match of boarding school teaching life. And it was a 1-year deal. After a year, you'd move on. In some rare cases, if there was a position open there, maybe you'd have a shot at that. But it was, a 1-year commitment. And so I taught there for a year, had a good experience. Didn't get anything full-time the next year, which was kind of a frustration. So I came back home and I actually substitute taught here at Shady Side. Mr. Deal was great about hooking me up with coaching gigs so I could kind of keep myself active in the field. And then I got my first real full-time job with Kimball Union Academy in Meriden, New Hampshire. Very traditional 7-day New England boarding school. Half-day classes on Wednesdays and Saturdays, so that you could travel and go to your away games and matches, that sort of thing. And I was there for 2 years, and I enjoyed my time there. I wasn't necessarily looking to leave there right away, but the English department chair at Shady Side at the time, Tim Vincent, gave me a call in my second year there and said, "There's an opening. Are you interested? Do you want to apply?" And I jumped on it because, especially at that time, there was very little turnover in the faculty in the late 90s. There was a large core of veteran teachers, who at that time were kind of like maybe mid or later career. And a kind of joke people had was, if you want to get a job at Shady Side, like you're better off checking the obituaries. Like people just stay there, until the bitter end. And so I wasn't gonna delay. I jumped on it. That was 1997, and it all worked out. I've been here ever since.
And what was that first year back like, returning to where you obviously went to school?
I tell you, it was actually a little bit of a tricky transition. I'll tell you, Parker, because of the very veteran makeup of the place at the time. Like when I was at Kimball Union, if you were young and new, there was a kind of peer group that you could connect with right away, because at schools like Kimball Union, there would be a small core of veterans who made a career of a place like Kimball Union. But because those 7-day boarding schools are so demanding, it's kind of a relentless pace to life there. There's a lot of turnover to those places. And even in the New England boarding school community, there's a lot of movement. People, in order to make career changes and advancements, there's a lot of regular movement for teachers there. So it was kind of easier in a way to be new there. There were lots of new people every year, lots of turnover, and so you kind of felt like you could make the place your own pretty quickly. Even like I said, I was only there 2 years. When I arrived here, like it was almost the same faculty that had been in place when I graduated in '89, and it wasn't that long a time in between. But still, that faculty had endured, and so it was a little tougher to come here and be new. There weren't just as many new teachers. There wasn't much turnover, as I was mentioning before. So that first year or so was kind of a transition. And even psychologically looking back, like I had wanted it so much for so long to be back here that it almost couldn't possibly live up to what I wanted it to be right away. So I'm sure that played a part in it too. But of course, before too long, I felt like it was very much my place again.
And how did you feel getting back into coaching cross country? And
Well, that was great, because I worked with Bill McConnell, Mac. He was my coach. Mac taught and coached here from 1967 to 2007. And it was an absolute delight to be Mac's assistant for my first, what would have been 11 years here, I think. I thoroughly enjoyed Mac. He was always good to me. And that was pretty special to be Mac's assistant for those years. And then I even got to, and in the spring, I was the head coach of the boys track and field team. And a real thrill was, for a stretch there, Buddy Hendershot, who had been my head coach in track, he joined as my assistant. And that was a priceless stretch, to have the Bud man as kind of my right-hand man throughout that. And he couldn't have been more gracious about being my assistant. Like, there was never a hint of, tension, like, well, I've been head coach before and now I'm your assistant. Like, there was none of that to the dynamic. It was a blast. We had a lot of success during that stretch, and so it was fun to share it with Bud.
And coming back, and even today, are things still as they were as you were a student, or if you think that things have changed drastically?
I mean, drastically? I know. I mean, are things the same? Have things changed? Yeah, yes to both. Parker, I would say yes to both. I think, the classroom experience remains, I think in a lot of ways wonderfully the same. I think we still have the relatively small classes. I think we still have the great relationships, with the student body that we've had for a long time. I remember one summer I did a seminar at Duquesne studying Milton, and I was there with folks from all over the country. It was fortunate it was right here in my backyard. But one day we were taking a break. The sessions lasted morning and afternoon, so we were taking kind of a break, and we were all just kind of hanging out outside the one building on Duquesne's campus. And a Shady Side student comes walking by. He had been there, for some other program, I think a music program that he was taking part in the summer. Anyway, so the student comes by, and it wasn't even a boy I had taught or was particularly close to. Hadn't shared a class with him like, I had with you, Parker, and enjoyed our time together. But we knew of each other, and he made a point of coming over, saying hello, asking how I was doing. We talked about why we were there on Duquesne's campus. He walked away, and I didn't think the interaction was extraordinary. All the other people in my group looked at me slack-jawed, and I said, "What's the big deal?" And they were all teachers; they all taught, but they all taught at public schools, and they said, "That kid goes to your school?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. That's how you heard. That's how I know." And they said, "None of the kids at our school would come over and talk with us like that. That just wouldn't happen. They wouldn't feel like they would maybe, catch our eye and maybe wave. But that was incredible to see how he wanted to come over and just say hello. And I think those, I remember that from when I was a student, and I think those kinds of interactions, have still been a big part of, and the relationships we have in our classes remain a big part of what we do, which is great. I think that's important. Yeah.
And that sort of community aspect, has that been one of the driving forces of keeping you around, or what's
For sure.
the main reason that you've decided to stay?
Yeah, I mean, the classroom experience is the first most important component of that. I've loved just the day-to-day interaction. There's a real joy in being able to come in. I remember in our class, there was a day I walked in, and you guys had a tournament bracket of different characters from the Shakespeare plays, and who you thought should win. It was the criteria for who was better were hilarious. But to be a part of a group like that, and to sit down and have the opportunity to bring what I like to think of as amateur scholarship into our work together, sharing work from Harold Bloom, with you guys in a high school setting. That's the first most important thing that I think brings me back every year. Yeah.
Perfect. And do you have a class to teach? And because it's 11.
I think we no, because we're into 4A, so we're okay.
Perfect.
We're okay.
Sounds good. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
And do you think? Do you have any super? I'm trying to think of a way to phrase the question. Memories that you can almost connect to when you were a student to as you were a teacher, or
like parallel kind of things.
Yeah, things that have happened, things that have happened that have made you reminisce almost.
Oh goodness. Certainly there are like goofy things that happen among the cross country guys that make me think of the goofy things that we would do when I was a student here. I don't know if any in particular come to mind, but that kind of nonsense. I wish because there are definitely times when I'll text one of my high school buddies. I wish I could think of something in particular right now, but I'll get back to my desk in the English office. There's a string, a text string of 3 of my high school buddies, and I'll say here's what's great about being back at your alma mater, and I'll tell them something that happened that day. So yeah, there are lots of times actually probably that happens. Yeah.
And what do you think has been both your greatest joy of being a teacher or a student at Shady Side, and then what do you think has been sort of the worst part of being a teacher or a student at Shady Side? Real controversial stuff here. No,
it's okay. Like I said, the joy is the daily work, work we get to do. I mean, I always think of one of the best stretches of the year is from Thanksgiving to Christmas, because with our calendar, we just finished term 1 and all the grading, all the comment writing is done, at Thanksgiving. And so we start the new term in December, and there's, kind of usually a 3-week stretch there, when I can just read outside materials and then bring it to class and then have a good time talking about it with my classes. That's always one of the kind of delightful time periods in the school year. What's a challenge? Well, Parker, we're not paid a king's ransom for what we do. The ingredients are on the outside of the box. You know what you are and you aren't going to get. This isn't a Shady Side, matter. This is independent schools compared to public schools or the broader, degreed professional world. And so, there's that aspect that I can't say consumes me or I think of regularly, but I go back for a reunion event for college, say, and I'm hanging out with my buddies, and you become aware in different ways of the extraordinary, in some cases, difference between the financial rewards of other careers and careers that certainly were an option for me, that were available to me, and so that's you that going into it, like I said, but it's at different points you think, it'd be nice if there were an extra digit in my salary.
Has there ever been anything at Shady Side that you tried maybe as a student, or something that's happened once or twice that you think should stay a tradition or stay something that we do more often?
Let me think. Wow. Something that's come or gone that I think we should get back to. That's I don't know. I think we're heading into exam week, and I think it's not popular, but I do think exams matter. I do think that's a good. I was just saying this in the English office. The Foundations 1 exam, I think, is perfect in some regards, because all the kids are nervous about it, and they all find it something that demands a lot of them, without, I think, being unfair or or a beat down or anything like that. Like, I think that experience really hits the sweet spot of stretching the students we have, expecting a lot of them, and at the same time, giving them a challenge that they can meet, that they can do. And I hope that's something that we keep in our calendar and keep in our curriculum. Like, I think exams matter. Yeah.
Is there anything on the flip side, something that you think we should get rid of?
I think sometimes there are days and activities that we allow to creep into the calendar that I would just as soon have be classroom teaching days. And it's not that what we do with those days is not worthwhile or meaningful, but on balance, in terms of the trade-off, there are definitely times when I think we could have been in class instead, and I think that would have been good.
Do you think, we've been talking the past few questions about tradition, that
Sure.
tradition is something that makes Shady Side so special, or that was sort of a draw for you to come back even?
I think that the tradition of the academic program first and foremost, and I think the tradition of requiring students to get into the habit of a balanced life, both academically, well, I'll even say, all three I think matter: academically, artistically, and athletically. When I think of some of the life habits that I have maintained, I absolutely can see the start of them, here at school, here at Shady Side. The habit of keeping up with my work and attending to it, in a timely manner, and feeling that sense of obligation that you need to have work complete and you need to be prepared for the next day. Whether I went into teaching or some other field, like, I think that was just a kind of good life habit that I got into here at Shady Side with the daily work that was expected of me, and the healthy lifetime habit of doing something physical on pretty much a daily basis, like, the whole healthy mind, healthy body life balance, I think, is something that I developed here, no question. Like, the athletic department, or requirement, I should say, absolutely got me into that lifetime habit that, when I'm done with work for the day, like, I should do something, to take care of myself and physically.
And this is going to be our last question.
Ooh,
So
okay,
it's a
Parker.
good one. If someone approached you right now and said, I'm a 8th grader and next year I'm going to Shady Side, what would your response be to that person?
Congratulations. Like, do it, man, and take advantage of everything the place has to offer and make it your own. Like, I think that's the opportunity you have here. There's tons of stuff that you can take advantage of, that the place will provide for you, academically, athletically, artistically, and as you take advantage of those opportunities, like give back in the work that you do there, to make it your own, and don't just adopt what Shady Side has to offer. Give back to it so that Shady Side reflects something of yourself when you're all said and done. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome,
I
Parker.
appreciate it.
No trouble.